So this is just a, you know how to tune up or city bike a old bike for fun and profit. To flip it or to make it rideable for a friend. Okay, so what I have here is a little Raleigh Technium mountain bike I picked up. It was on Facebook Marketplace for, seemed like weeks and weeks and weeks. No one cared. It was 85 bucks off from 50. And it's in pretty good shape. I bought it because it looked like it might have some Dior stuff on it. But it's got the Mountain LX. And brakes. You know, just generic silver candies. But it's 7-speed. And it's got a real hyperglide rear wheel, so it has normal cassette, you know, 7-speed. It looks like it's in pretty alright shape, even though it's got the more BMX-y style Araya single wall rims with no rim liners. We do have lots of other wheel sets we could use if we wanted to, but we'll see how smooth rolling these are, and we'll see how round and true they are, and probably just use them. I did check to see the seat post moves and the stem's not stuck, so that's fine. The spike's all original. The paint's in pretty nice shape. And I was thinking about stealing parts off it, but now I'm kind of thinking they're not that great. It's probably worth more to someone who has a little used rideable bike. It's also pretty small. I have a friend whose mom gave me her bike. And it's like a 35-pound hybrid thing with 700C wheels and fat tires. And this sits real big. So this might be a good alternative for her. I think it'll have about the same, you know, pedal to seat post, about the same seat post to bars. Once I swap some stuff out. I've only got 2 parts for this bike already that I've thought about using. The old black cruiser bars. They're very much like the VO Tourist bar I really like. That'll make this thing way more uprighty and city-y, and it'll shorten the reach up by a few inches. I think I'll probably even use the stem because it's black and shiny. It makes me wish I had like a black seat post or a black outer chainring or something. And I have these like specialized Nimbus armadillos. People are into for a second, especially in 27. These are 26 1.5. And they still have the casting lines on them. The sidewalls aren't crunchy. I got them at a swap meet for 10 bucks. I was going to put them on that little Trek 7000 I had for a while, but I decided I wanted something bigger and suppler for that. But yeah, I mean, I don't remember what that bar cost me. Probably 10 bucks, or probably included in some parts lot. I paid $10 for tires. I got 50 into this. I'll probably put some new cables and housing on and some new brake pads. I mean, with any luck, I'll be into this bike under 100 bucks with all used stuff. Let's see if that's going to be true by checking this chain. Oh yeah, the chain is no wear at all. Doesn't even get to 25. Hopefully the cassette's nice. And we can just party. So the first thing I'm going to do, I mean, you know, you should always check your bike for frontal damage or fork that looks bent or frozen headset, frozen seat post and stem, which I already checked. Other than that, I mean, check the bottom bracket. Man, that feels good too. May or may not even overhaul that bottom bracket. This thing, I mean, it has like no brake wear either. These are probably original pads and no wear. This bike just has like no wear. I might just do like a real basic-y tune-up, basically just cleaning it and making sure everything's legit and works. And I'll definitely do the brake cables and housing with those longer bars. Yeah, I'll probably save these levers, save everything. I got the old tube out, and I'm going to see if it's savable. Tubes don't really go bad. Sometimes some really old ones, the valve stem will pull out or something, but unless there's like a real hole in it, often tubes will last forever. I'm going to pump these up, set them aside, and if they're still full, they're probably good. You can hear a leak, but it could be this valve. Nope. I can still hear the leak. So this tube is junk. Yeah, big hole. Probably a pinch flat from riding out low. So, no thanks. And patch tubes. I have varying degrees of luck with it. The bike I'm trying to sell or somebody else's bike I'm not really into it. I don't want to come back tomorrow or right when the person shows up to pick it up and have the tire be flat. If you want to patch your own tubes, I patch my own tubes, and it's my own fault if I deal with them, but they go flat or something, but I don't like to do it to other people. And I have a ton of used tubes I've saved. And I got the wheels just kind of dusted off, checked the true, had to touch 4 or 5 spokes in the back to make it perfect. Front was already perfect. Check the hubs. The hubs have zero play and they sound and feel like they're really freshly greased. Because they had a tune-up and was never ridden. So I'm not even going to sneak and grease the hubs, which I normally do. Found some used tubes, found used rim tape, pop the tires on so the wheels are ready to go. While it's all apart, I'm going to take this time to swap the brake pads. The old brake pads look brand new. They are rock hard. You can kind of stab them with your fingernail and see if you leave little indents. That lets you know they're gummy and soft enough. They're not. They're super hard. They're a weird old style. I got some weird cheapy Bell brake pads that are like the replacement style for this. Otherwise, I think you can use V brake pads. But I use these on the Trek. No. I used these on the little Bridgestone CP1, and they were so stoppy and nice. And I have them, so why not use them on this guy too? NBD. So we pop these on and off. I like dust around the candy brakes and stuff too while I'm in there. Get a little cleaned up, so I'm just going to kind of lightly dust this off with a clean rag. It's just dirty from sitting in the garage or basement for years and years and years. It's barely been ridden. With that all on. Oh, these cranks do say LX. Alright, cool. Okay. So there we are. Got the wheels popped on. Got the new pads in. Always take a little sandpaper and sand the gloss off the pads. All that gloss does is cause squeals, it sticks, leaves debris on the rim. Get it off. Your bike's way less likely to squeal and be a problem. But also if it squeals, you can individually adjust each brake a little bit. So yeah, clean wheels. Very nice, barely used tires, look brand new. New pads. It is a start. And we'll pull the Seatpost and stem out and grease them and while it's out. And this headset feels totally fine. Not of adjustments, buttery smooth. So probably won't grease it either. On major tune-ups I will, but this thing needs such a minor tune-up. The $60 tune-ups, you don't do anything you don't have to do. Other than dropping some lube in the housing and touching some barrel adjusters and, wiping the bike down so it looks like you did something. And during a tune-up, I just take a crappy old rag, a little degreaser, grab the chain, try and hold it all the way around. Do a little backwards spin while pinching the rag so you don't get any degreaser and grease spitting all over your wheel. Grab it from a few different angles. Go to a dry spot on the rag. Sometimes I'll do fun stuff like hold it down at a weird angle, try and really get more of the inside of the links. I like to pinch the derailleur pulley and do it so you can scrub anything on that guy. In case there's any big chunks of grease. If they're real big chunks of grease, I'll take a little screwdriver and just scrape the derailleur pulley while spinning. And that is really it. People freak out about chains and cleaning them and fancy tools and expensive lubes and just wipe it down, let it dry, and then we'll do a little lubing. I do mean a very little. I'm also, while I'm at it, just going to wipe off this cage. Wipe around the brakes, wipe around the tubes, wipe around the dropouts before I put the wheels in. Just trying to get as much of the visible buildup of grease and grime off. Make this thing look shiny and clean like we did something. I think if you pumped up people's tires and wiped off their chain and pulleys and wiped all the dust off their bikes, dust and grime, and didn't touch one other thing, 90% of your customers would be super, super happy. 90% of anybody who grabs a bike is going to be like, oh, it's so clean and looks so good, and my faith and confidence is restored in it, and it's totally safe and fine, even if you don't actually adjust any brakes or adjust any derailleurs or do anything. People are like, yeah, that's so much better. Now, lube the chain, I like Tri-Flow. It's the least expensive, oldest, best working waterproof chain lube you can get. It's got a little dude, this little hose. You can sort of come in here and just kind of turn the bike and just barely get it, like, just put like a quarter of a drip out, so just get the tiniest little bit. You can see it smacking on each one of these links. Because people think you want lube all over your chain. You do not. All it does is attract grease and grime. And that just acts like liquid sandpaper just around your chain and your rings and your cogs. You just want to get inside these little pins, inside all these little pivot points. So it's going to go around, barely getting any squeezed out and dropped on. And you just want to pedal backwards for a minute, just to really let it kind of sink and soak in there. I'm already getting a little bit of drips on here, so I know I got plenty. I really want to make sure it doesn't get any on the braking surface. Once we do that, we'll find a clean spot on the rag and just kind of wipe it down again. Like I said, you only want it to go inside those links. You do not want any on the outside. Once we changed all the cables and housing for the new bars, it'll all be brand new, I don't have to worry about it. But if we didn't change any cables and housing, I would do fun stuff like pedaling forward and pushing the derailleur with your hand. Then you can pop the cable out and you can drop some drops of lube down it. So usually roll it forward, drop 4 or 5, no more than 4 or 5. Otherwise it'll start pouring out the other end. Drop some drops of lube, get it all set back into its little home. And that one would be great. Same thing with brakes and all that stuff, but the bigger, wider bars are going to need new cable and housing, so we don't have to worry about it on this setup. And then we'll adjust all the barrel adjusters and all that stuff. If we weren't going to change the cable and housing, we could play with it now and just click the shifter. One click should be one shift. This is working quite terribly, so it definitely needs to be lubed and adjusted, maybe play with the barrel adjusters or whatever. This thing has like 0 miles on it. It is so gorgeous. Okay, so next it's time for that bar cable housing. Okay, so I got the bar slid out, and it was an old heavy steel bar. It was like 2 pounds, so I'm gonna shave like 1 pound off this bike just by swapping this bar out, this cruiser bar, which is exciting. I'm just wiping some of the dust off this headset, make it look a little cleaner and nicer. And even though it's so smooth and nice and adjusted, I'm not going to open it and grease it. I am always, no matter what, going to add grease to the stem and that seat post when it comes out. Because these things like to freeze in place, and boy, if they do, it is a whole thing. Our old dirty rag, and it's actually pretty clean and greased. It's really supporting my theory that it's had a pretty recent tune-up. I absolutely did not need to do this, so that is nice. Probably could have put it back in without even wiping it down, honestly. I'm gonna shoot some more grease in here. My handy dandy barbecue tool. This is for like shooting marinade inside barbecue or something. You got it at Goodwill. Works pretty great for grease. Spread it around in there. Put this dude at the maximum height, because most people that want cruiser bars want their bars up as high as they'll go. We're just getting it pretty good for now. We'll do a double check later, and we'll eyeball it to make sure it's straight when it's on the ground. Got this nice light aluminum cruiser bar. Bang-a-rang. And now, most vintage stems are 25.4. Most cruiser bars are 25.4. So you got to worry about it too much. You start messing around with some of the higher end stems, you can get some 26.0 stuff, you get some Cinelli 26.4, and even like some Dura Ace and other Italian brands will make 26.4 stems for Cinelli bars. Then you got to start worrying, and you can shim bars. I don't like it. They always slip because I'm heavy. I don't recommend it. The best way is just to use the right size stuff. Gonna undo all these cables, because we can't have any of these cables holding us back while we're trying to slide the grips and stuff onto the bars. And the same thing, I'm just gonna wipe down, especially the underside you can't see. I got the stuff all off. This is kind of a weird one. It's almost like a really modern mountain bike where the shifter just bolts onto the brake lever. So I can't use them independently. I was going to use these shifters on something else. You can't. They stay with these brake levers, so okay dokay. Let go. Let go. And I'm sliding these about as far forward as possible. So you really want room for a full grip. I really like a little bit of a gap between the grip and the lever. And so as far forward as possible is usually the right thing. And we'll, measure them and adjust them and put the grips on and adjust them and adjust the height and all that stuff later. We're just sort of getting them real close for now, and then once on the ground we do our final double checks. That is the time to deal with all the stuff. Also, anytime you have a bike apart, cable and housing off, you have to roll the barrel adjusters all the way in and then just out like a turn. All the way in, and just out, like one full turn or 2 or 3 little of these little quarter half turns. Because you really want as much of that barrel adjuster as possible when you're actually doing your setup. If it's all the way out, you put all the cables and housing on, you have to take all the tension out, then all of a sudden it's way too far. So really get it. Really want that barrel adjuster in as far as possible. They're really easy to bend and break, so don't just have a bunch hanging out. I know original super thick 6mm housing, original super thick wound like motorcycle cables. I keep getting these really nice bikes that are all original. It's always a bit of a tragedy to be the one to mess that up. I might use those grips and put them back on. They're super nice. But I also have some blue silicone grips I'll probably put on to brighten this thing up. She's got some purple pedals on her other bike. So if she does buy this bike, I'm going to switch those purple pedals on. This one's missing a dust cap and stuff. They're cheapo. So even if not, I might go online and maybe find some cool blue mountain bikey flat style pedals. That'd be cool. Also, this bike is so light with the silver and the little black parts, but really the blue and the white logos and stuff. It's a very good chance I might go nuts and put white housing on just to lighten it up a little bit more. Because bike should be light and fun. We are going to work on a little trick today. So I'll show you a little trick I like to do. So this had internal cable housing, but it had the old 6mm stuff with the extra thick cable, so I really couldn't use it. Scout's not helpful. Just because I'm sitting down doesn't mean you can attack me. So, with this internal routing, if it has a solid sleeve inside, you can just slide the cable and housing right through. If it doesn't, you're basically boned. The trick is to take the old cable and cut it and put the new piece of housing half on the old cable and then push and pull the old one through. So you have a piece of the internal cable through the old housing and the new housing to help guide it through. Couldn't do that in this one because of the oversized stuff. And if we try and go all the way through, here is the exit. Not a chance. Never going to line up. There's some magnets and some fancy stuff you can use. But what I like to do is take an old piece of shift housing. Shift is better because it's thinner. I'm going to bend the end so it's sticking out just a little bit. See it? So we can try and get it in through and wiggle it and wiggle it and wiggle it to get this little stick out end to pop through that hole. I do this all the time on internal routing stuff. I do this all the time for like internal routing dynamo stuff when it's making custom bikes. There's a million theories and vacuums and all sorts of stuff people are always saying to do, but really, this is the least obnoxious thing. The most amount of time. I'm holding the light up so I can see what's going on there, trying to see the end of that cable. I'm twisting it with my fingers, while bashing it forward, trying to find where it's hitting. And I see nothing. I wonder if it's stuck in this lug. There's barely a lip in there. There's definitely some lips in there. I don't feel like too big of a one. A little pokey tool to help in the end too. Let's try and make this a little bit more aggressive. Trying to get more of a real right angle on the end so you can spin it around and get it. If that doesn't work, we'll try and go with no angle at all. See if it'll go through the tubes. I'm going to straighten it more. The bend's more subtle. Hopefully it'll get through whatever the internal lip is. Also, we can try it from this side and go the other way and see what happens. Maybe it's easier. I really always want to do what's easier, not what you think is right. So I just got a little a little bend at this end, but really that kink there is what it's all about. The trick is we're going to fish it through this internal hole in here. There it goes. Got to get through the other side too. I'm sort of wiggling and jiggling and twisting and turning. Trying to, oh, I think it went through. Yep. So I'm just going to twist. Oh, I see it. I'm down. Oh, and it pops right out. Huh. I know I'm really blocking the camera here. But it popped right out by twisting it. So just scrape the inside of the tube until it just falls out of that hole. And I'll do this again with a close-up. So here you can see the hole. I'm coming from the other side and trying to fish and fish and fish. I'm just twisting it, looking in there to see if I can see it. Twisting the cable gently in my fingers. Okay, now it's through the butt. I can see it, and there it is. Pops right out. So back in, twisting, 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 and you twist around, it pops right out. So now we have this piece of shift cable, half and half, and we're going to load the new piece of housing. I'm going to hold this guy so it can come out. We're sliding the new housing onto the shift cable. Trying to get it past this little internal lips and butts. And if you're doing down tubes and C tubes, you'll hit the water bottle bosses and you got to fight past them sometimes. Now it's up at this end. I can see the little white piece of housing. It still wants to go straight, doesn't want to come out. So I got to push back here and pull this guy, and boop, there we are, just like that. This is the easiest way I've ever found. Park has like an $80 tool. There's a couple like Chinese knockoffs of it, like little wires and guides and a magnet, and you can sort of fish it through with the magnet and pull the wire through, and then you can jam the wire. It's got a little screw hook you can jam into the housing and try and fish that through. I've used that $80 Park tool a couple of times. It worked pretty well. I was pretty impressed. The magnet was even pretty strong, especially on like aluminum and carbon frames. It's not interfering with the steel because aluminum and carbon aren't magnetic. You can really fish stuff up. Totally cool. I think this wire works better. I think maybe some really modern pain in the butt carbon frames with 5 million internal routings, maybe that magnet is the absolute truth, but it's fished all the way through, and I just pull this old dead shift cable out and we can throw it away. I always save some old cables like this, just because I'm always doing these internal routings. Okay, so we got cables and housing on, levers sort of roughly in place, shifters roughly in place. Like, shifts pretty dang good. One click does one shift real nice and crisp. Front's the same way. Got brakes roughed in. Got the white housing on, new cables. I got some cool NARPs on it. The spike's like blue and white with little green and purple and blue. So I got some little green and purple cable NARPs. Put them on. Looks pretty cool. Really, the next thing is we'll do grips. But first, grips and test ride. But first, I'm going to deal with this Seatpost. It's a little sticky. It's a little dirty and crusty. Let's clean it up. So I got it on the ground for this. Loosens up. I know it moved because I moved it. Loosen this way up. It's real tight though. Sort of pushing down the bike with gravity in my knees. Turning up. This is really hard. You can stand over it and do it backwards. Sometimes I'll stand on a pedal and do this. So it's real bad. So the post is a little bit uck. 26.8. I'm going to do this with a cutting fluid, but I don't really have any, so I'm just going to do a little bit of silicone lube. It's cheap Flex Zone. These are like 17 bucks online. Don't pay $40 for a bike one that says it's 27.2. It's a lie. It's like inch and an eighth or whatever. Let's try and get some of this old dried, gunked up grease out of here. It's mostly probably fine. The silicone lube pouring down there is going to be fine. That's basically all frame saver is or whatever. Oil inside tubes is good for the tubes. It'll keep them from rusting and corroding. Don't even worry about it. Seatpost is real gummy. Got some degreaser. But I wasn't going to have time to work. A little wire brush. Just going to try and rough some of this stuff off. The Seatpost is so scratchy I'll probably buff it with a little emery cloth or sandpaper too. But the gunk will just gunk that paper up and make it stop working, so try and get it off. And this is a bright silver shiny anno. I would soak it in degreaser better and not sand it, but it's already pretty rough. And it wasn't polished anno. So a little bit of this and a little bit of some emery cloth is going to make it look great. But it's got some 60 sandpaper, usually like 80 grit emery cloth. It's a little rough. And it's just paper instead of cloth. It's going to tear easier, but we'll just buff it out. And this is pretty rough, but it makes it look even. I'm going to take a little Scotch-Brite and do this as well. See if I can make it a little softer. Scotch-Brite gives a pretty nice, even, machine-looking finish. Come up here and get the top as well. Now it looks clean and even. A little scuffy, it's pretty well hidden. I'm going to grease the C-tube, smush it in. I used to use little acid brushes and kept them in the grease for this. I don't know why I don't do that. I've just been too lazy to order any. Also, it probably doesn't really matter. I'm going to leave it up pretty high for my test ride. Wipe off the excess grease so it doesn't get all over my pants. Or all over the customer or friend or whoever. This is the point I like to stand over the bike, try and eyeball the stem. You know, can get it lined up with the front wheel and tighten, eyeball the saddle, all that kind of stuff. Make sure the brakes are even. And everyone loves just squeezing brakes all the time for no reason. Including me. And I've decided not to put the stock grips back on, even though they seem really nice and new. I have these fun blue silicone grips. Like my last fun pair. I'm just going to go ahead and put them on. Wash my hands first, because it's so easy to get grips and bar tape dirty. I always wash my hands before I do them, no matter what. Getting those silicone wipes off real easy, still. Alright, we're going to pop these grips on. It's a nice silicone, but they're too tight. Guys use all sorts of different methods, air compressors. I saw somebody do zip ties. But I like a little rubbing alcohol. I do mean a little. You gotta get it just the littlest amount. Get a little less, rub it on, it evaporates fast. If you get too much on, it won't evaporate, the grips will stay like loosey-goosey. So just enough to slide on, but pretty hard. That's even too much. Want it to kind of evaporate as soon as it goes on. These grips will bunch up, so I'm kind of really making sure it goes all the way on. I always use the bar end plugs. These bars are like hollow needles. They will whip around, they will bruise you, they will stab you, they will cut your skin. While we're waiting, let's weigh this bad boy. Our other bike is like 35 pounds. It has a light rack. It does have some really light half fenders. It's got a big heavy saddle. Might add a pound or two to this build. But she is 74. We still might do the other bike for her, but we might switch her out to this one. I want to know how much lighter it is. Balancing the bike, it's not hitting anything, but it looks like it might be. It's 29 pounds. So this bike's already 6 pounds lighter than the other one. That is a good start for a 74-year-old. I really might put a pound or two back on if we switch over the saddle. Put the rack and the little fenders and stuff on. Maybe we can talk her out of that stuff. First impressions are the brakes do not stop as well as I'd like. Might have to sand the rims a little bit, see if that helps. I left the straddles at the stock height. If I would have set on myself, I'd have lowered them quite a bit. So we might do that if I'm not happy with them, but it's probably fine. To sand the rims, I think it'll give the friction it needs. The rims are pretty polished. Shift's great. In the stand, it was being a little bit of a brat on the highest cog in the rear. It's a lie. In the back is being a little bit of a brat on the lowest cog in the rear. I left the limit screw out a little bit, so I'll turn it in. And that's why you gotta test ride bikes, because they do act different on the street than in the stand. But that ride's good. It's definitely a million sizes too small for me. so it's a little awkward, but it's pretty cool. I never did lube these shifters. They shift pretty crisply, but might spray a little bit of that silicone lube in. Front brakes definitely a little tighter than the rear. Usually I'm riding, I just make that adjustment on the fly, but got these hoods in the way. Those dudes out of the way. This one's trying to bunch up under the lever too, which is uncool hood. Sort of clip onto this adjustment screw on the front. Might do one more test ride to feel the brakes. Might go sand the brakes and do another test ride. A little hands-free test too, make sure the fork's not bent, it's not pulling. Yeah, the brakes make it better and better. I should probably do a final adjustment. When it's adjusting the stand, it's hard to make them awesome. Pads are all at a weird angle. These rims have a bit of a weird angle, so I have to angle the pads up. It's still not enough. I don't think that's a perfect triangle. Can't easy want them to be a perfect triangle from pivot point to pivot point, not pivot, cable point to cable point to pinch pull point. This looks tall. It might be weak. I should probably lower them. Okay, so I came back in like the other day. It's been a couple days. I put a new front brake cable in so I could get it lower, because you can't really just lower a cable and have an ugly pinch point up high. It'll make it all spongy. So new cable, lowered the straddle, you know, pretty low. I like them, yeah, a little lower than the headset, but there's still room to get it open. And I changed those brake pads out. So I swapped those weird Bell old style brake pads out for these modern Jaguar or V-brake style pads. And that made it stop a lot better. The pads didn't seem to do as much as I wanted, but lowering this really changed it a lot. I also took a little lube and put it around this little brass pivot bolt there because it was being a little squeaky. I'm still considering sanding these rims, but I don't think it needs it. I might do it. And I dug through my secret stash of seats and tried to find the biggest, most comfy looking old lady saddle that didn't weigh anything. So this saddle is like maybe a little bit more than a pound, or a lot of them are like 4 or 5 pounds. Just totally insane. So I'm going to swap this old Avocet saddle out for this nice comfy lady saddle. And it's got some like, you know, like a wreck over here and some scuffs. So if it looked cooler and I was just going to sell this bike as is, it's one thing, but thinking that I'm probably going to sell it to a lady, I'm going to put this on. It's my friend Rosie. I'm going to put this on. And this old Avocet saddle, I'm going to put on my Nothing Special Schwinn and see how I like it for that. I might test ride it again just to convince myself to sand these brakes, these rims, or maybe I'll just sand these rims. So sanding rims totally sucks, but I decided to do it anyways because they're polished, and two, they have a ton of this, I don't know if you can see in the camera, this black crud which is like left over from the old brake pads. So basically it's a slick surface with another slick surface with your brake pad trying to stop it. So sanded, away we go. It sucks because you can see it seems fast. We gotta do the whole thing, both sides, all the way around on the brake track. And then sometimes I'll go around a little bit more, see if I can find any really dark black spots, get the old pad material off. That's it. Rims are sanded, that'll get any oil off, that'll get any road grime off, that'll get the brake bits off, that'll get the gloss off. Now it's time for test ride number 3. Hopefully. I'm really trying to make the right hand signal here. Cross the fingers. Really hoping that this solves all the brake issues, makes me love this bike. Because I'm giving it to a nice old lady for arthritis in her hands. I'm feeling guilty because I kind of feel like she might need a V-brake bike because it stops so much better. So we'll see. I can always change this out for V-brakes. That means I need different shifters, different brake levers, different brakes. Might as well just find her a slightly more modern bike. Well, that was it. Test ride number 3. Didn't bother to film it because it's not exciting at all. But the brakes instantly felt twice as stoppy. Sanding the rims is absolutely the truth. They didn't have any hesitation or lag. They didn't have any jerkiness to them. They're just smooth. They just felt a little better and a little better. And this new saddle is totally comfortable. And I think this little Raleigh is done, man. I'll let you know if Rosie takes it or if I put it for sale. Alright, thanks for watching. Little Raleigh.